Hey everybody, it's Mr. Haskell, and I'm back with more things that you should know by being alive. And today I want to talk about the First Continental Congress. I want to look at some of its causes, the key figures, the actions that it took, and its roles in setting the colonies on the path towards independence. So let's look at the things you should know. Why did it happen? Well, in 1774, tensions were high between the American colonies and the British Crown. And the trigger was the Intolerable Acts, which is what the colonists called them. The Parliament referred to them as the Coercive Acts. These were passed after the Boston Tea Party, and as a result, the Coercive Acts closed Boston Harbor. It altered the government of Massachusetts. It allowed British officials to be tried in a different area, a different place, away from where the accusations took place, and it expanded upon the Quartering Act, the putting of soldiers into private citizens' homes. Colonists, of course, saw these as a violation of their rights, and it sparked calls for a united colonial response. So, what was the First Continental Congress? The First Continental Congress was a gathering of delegates of 12 of the 13 colonies. Georgia sat this one out, and it met in Philadelphia at Carpenter's Hall from September 5th until October 26th of 1774. It wasn't a prolonged meeting, but the goal was to address the grievances the colonies had with Britain while avoiding a complete break. They didn't want a breakdown of the relationship. So, some of the key figures and the roles that they played along with the colonies they represented. So some of the most important delegates that we would note would be George Washington and Patrick Henry of Virginia, John Adams and his cousin Samuel Adams from Massachusetts, John Jay of New York, John Dickinson of Pennsylvania. These guys will play roles, to some degree, some of them will, in the Second Continental Congress, which will follow. Now, they brought with them a varying degree of different perspectives. Some wanted to reconcile with Britain. Dickinson of Pennsylvania was huge for reconciliation. Others, like Patrick Henry, he argued that I am not a Virginian, but an American. So, there's a wide range on the spectrum here. Now, what did they do? What ended up happening? Well, the Congress produced something called the Declaration and Resolves, which, was basically what they were trying to come to. Like, what were they willing to extend to the British Crown and Parliament? So the Continental Congress produced this, and they said, okay, we want to assert the colonists' rights, the rights of the colonists, to life, liberty, and property. Very Lockean, right? They condemned the coercive acts, the intolerable acts, and they supported a boycott of British goods. This is known as the Continental Association. And then they also called for colonial militias to prepare in case of conflict. Now, they also agreed to get back together in May 1775 if any of the issues weren't resolved. It's like, hey, let's have a meeting to decide if we have another meeting kind of thing, right? Now, why is the First Continental Congress important? It often gets overlooked, of course, because of the weight that the Second Continental Congress carries later on. But the First Continental Congress was not yet about independence. Instead, it was about colonial unity, defending rights, applying economic pressure on Britain, and also showing the Crown that the colonies were willing to resist if pushed. So it marked the first major coordinated political action by the colonies. Now, how did Britain, how did the Crown, how did Parliament respond to this? And ultimately, we know that it leads to war. The Crown, the British government, ignored the Congress's petitions and declared Massachusetts was in a state of rebellion. Tensions will escalate. This leads to Lexington and Concord in April of 1775, where the first shots of the Revolutionary War are fired. And by May 1775, The Second Continental Congress convened, moving towards, managing the war effort and then eventually declaring independence. What's the legacy? Why does it matter? Well, the First Continental Congress laid the groundwork for colonial unity against British policies, collective action, and also self-governance, and the idea of an American identity that was separate from Britain. It set the colonies on a path that would lead, step by step, towards independence. So, to wrap this up, I guess, the First Continental Congress wasn't about declaring independence, but instead it was about defending rights and unity. It was the first step towards revolution. Hey, so like, follow, comment, share, all those normal things for more things you should know by being alive. Because understanding these meetings like the First Continental Congress helps us to see how independence was built through courage, but also collaboration. Thanks for watching.